Good morning, my friends. Welcome to this episode of Happiness After Codependency. I am Marshall Burtcher, and I am your guide in your journey beyond your codependency and to help you restore your safety, your sanity, yourself, and come to know, love, and live who you are, which is ultimately what sets us free from codependency and the need to be codependent. Today, our episode is we're doing episode number 4 in the Boundary series, acknowledging the whole reality rather than compartmentalizing. It might sound a little weird as a boundary, but we'll get into it here in just a second. So before we do that, I need to share this out to the community. The community is your safe haven here on the internet where you can find tools, guidance, and support in your journey back to yourself, back to self-respect, back to wholeness, back to your well-being and happiness after codependency and after narcissistic abuse. The link's above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys for subscribing and for helping me grow the impact of my work and sharing what I do with others, because it works for you. That's really what matters. My goal is the things I teach, the tools I create, the courses I do work. I mean, what's the point if they don't? So, yeah, I'm going to get that shared out right now. Let me know that you guys are here, how you're doing today. Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to click not that button. Today's going to be a day, isn't it? All right, let's go back here. Discard. Yay. Good morning, Laura. How are you? It's been a hot minute. Let's see here. Hot minute, cool minute, minutes. All right. So we are shared out. So guys, hi. Those of you in the community, it's good to see you. So boundaries number 4, acknowledging the whole reality rather than compartmentalizing it. So in codependency, we tend to have a habit of putting things in boxes. So what we do is we tend, I'll draw it actually. Let me open up the app here and we'll draw it, because why not? So let me come here to the stylus app view. Oh, there we are. Okay. So a lot of times with compartmentalizing, I'll just put a C here for compartmentalizing. What we do is we have events. So let's say this is the timeline of events here. So events. I've gotten some feedback on my writing. I'm working on it. I have a nerve disorder in my hand thanks to carpal tunnel. So today it's cooperating. So this is the timeline of events. Time line. I know it's not really spelled that way, but there you go. So timeline of events from past to future. Okay. What happens in this is events happen. So we had an event here and we put it in its own little box. Here's event A, event B, event C, event D. Okay. Now, let's say that this was an abusive event, and that this one was a loving event, and this one was a hurtful and neglectful event, and this one was abusive, and then we got a loving event, and so on and so forth. Notice what's going on here. We're separating the events from each other, making it look smaller and less impactful than it is. What eventually starts happening, especially for in toxic relationships, we're getting a lot of these abusive events, and we're only getting a few love events here. We start to see a trend. So if we're going with the abusive event, I'm going to draw this in orange. We're going up, and then they love us, they abuse us, we go farther, they love us, abuse, love us, abuse, love us. This right here is intermittent reinforcement. This is the pattern. Let me get here. This is the pattern that tells the truth. Okay? Pattern. Technically, this is what I mentioned before, intermittent reinforcement, which is where we're getting breadcrumbed and then abused, breadcrumbed and then abused over and over and over. What that does is it hooks us on the individual. We get hooked on the high that we receive with that, and then we get crushed with the low that comes with it. The relationship cycle is called the seduction, abuse, discard cycle. And emotionally, we're experiencing euphoria, distress, and despair in those peaks and valleys. Compartmentalization says, oh, well, there's only box A and box B and box C. They're separate. Being in contact with the whole of reality means we see the spectrum, we see the pattern, and then we respect that pattern. We acknowledge that that's reality and what's going on. That way we can choose what to do for ourselves that's best for ourselves. And the reason this is a boundary is we have to choose this. We have to confront reality. We have to come into contact with the wholeness of it. Not just, well, yesterday was a good day for 5 minutes and then went to hell for 3 hours. It's more like, what's really going on? What is the spectrum of experience here, and what's the dominant impact it has? Because really, if we're going for sobriety, we're going for reality, we're going for our own wholeness and our well-being, we have to acknowledge the pattern of behaviors, results, and impact that we are experiencing and that we're contributing to and we're involved in a relationship. Without acknowledging that, we don't know what's real. We're going to live in fantasy, and it's going to cut us off from our well-being. So the boundary here is to be honest with ourselves. What is really happening? What am I experiencing? What am I living through? What am I choosing? Especially if we've become aware of the pattern and we've decided to leave and we come back to it, we're choosing that. We're opening the door. It's not that they need to change or that there needs to be more accountability on their part. We have to become accountable to ourselves. So that's very, very blunt. Very blunt that, hey, I need to own that I am choosing to engage in this pattern. I need to own that this is the result. And I need to respect it. So I can treat myself with more love, with more kindness, to parent myself away from things that would harm me, despite how I feel about that person, place, or thing. See, it's our feelings don't necessarily get to guide us. We need to be conscious and alive and aware of what we're receiving in the event and what that impact is. It is a roller coaster. It is, Diane. And it's deliberately that way because it gets us hooked on the high of oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and then that is amplified by the dread created by cortisol and by adrenaline. It's an addictive cocktail. The extremes of both sides of those peaks hook us on them. That's where the craving comes in. And most of us have been neglected. We haven't been seen, valued, and loved for who we are. So we live in a desert, and those big euphoric moments are like a flood of chemicals to our nervous system. And then we want them more. So we chase after it. It activates our unmet needs. It activates the attachment trauma we've lived through, the unmet self, the incomplete self we live with. If you struggle with this, guys, and you're looking for your way out, the Heal Yourself strategy that's linked above on Facebook, below on YouTube is the solution to this. I lead you out of this trauma bond or love addiction. And it is a practice, persistent practice, because we have to train our brain to associate love with healthy things rather than with the chase and the intensity that we feel in the seduction, abuse, discard cycle and the euphoria, distress, despair cycles we go through. But we have to acknowledge whole reality. It's a fundamental boundary. My boundary is I need to see reality, and I need to acknowledge it, and I need to respond to it in an appropriate way. That's the hard part. That's the loving part. That's the parenting part. Because loving ourselves doesn't mean we're always going to feel good or we're going to be really happy with what we have to do. Loving ourselves is I respect my well-being. I respect my integrity, my wholeness. I respect my happiness long term. And I have to make this choice because the direction it's going and what I'm experiencing is taking away from that. I need to make, that's the boundary. That's the fundamental essential to sobriety, is to acknowledge reality, its impact, and then make choices and take actions that move us in a direction that promotes our long-term well-being and happiness, rather than favors this positive, this euphoric feeling we're having. It's a blunt thing, very, very blunt, very essential to us being able to be happy again, to have some peace of mind, to have relationships where we're seen, where we're nurtured, where they like us for who we are. We're not having to perform all the time. Oh, I'm going to perform to get this love. It's more like, there, hey, you're adorable, I love you. And it's earned. It's not something that we just take in because somebody's giving it to us. We're just going like, is this what I want? Do I want this from this person? Is this safe for me? Yeah, this is sober. It's sobriety. It's raw. It's real. It's to the point. That's the essential nature of this particular boundary. We have to acknowledge reality rather than compartmentalize things. Now, that can be difficult, and it can take time. It can take a lot of time to understand it. We have to immerse ourselves in it, touch it a little bit. Like, I acknowledge 5% of it and then step back. Because a lot of times, this is a shocking thing for us to go through. It's hard to acknowledge reality when we have survived by utilizing fantasy. So I've got to go gently with ourselves while being a bit persistent with it. It's like, yeah, well, is that what's really going on? What am I ignoring? What am I amplifying in this, and what am I muting in it? What do I need to see is happening over and over? What's the pattern? Because patterns of behavior, patterns of results, patterns of impact, they tell the truth about what's going on. Not someone's words, not someone's promises. The persistent pattern of behaviors they exhibit, the impact you experience with it, the results it creates for you in your world, that is your truth. That's what's real. And we have to come to terms with that. What are the patterns of my behavior? What are the patterns of the impact and results those create? Is that adding to my well-being and happiness? Sobriety. It gets you that way. So Laura says, this sounds all too familiar. Addiction and recovery is so applicable on so many planes. Thank you for helping people recognize or helping people become cognizant of this reality for so many. These tools are so delicate to implement in our lives. Yes, very delicate. Because we don't need to shame ourselves. We don't need to put ourselves down. There's not something wrong with us. We're dealing with a brain that needs love and it needs care. And the only way it found that was by doing and seeking after extreme things. Because it did not learn to love and respect itself. We've got to help train our brain to love and respect itself by loving and respecting that brain and giving it the effective parenting we need in self-governance, in an honoring and respecting our own sovereignty, our own well-being. That's the journey there, my friends. Thank you for being here. I want you to encourage you to go gently with this, yet be firm with yourself. Like, that's the pattern. Despite all the euphoric feelings and thoughts and fantasy that I'm feeling right now, and there's the pattern, and there's the result, and there's the impact. Acknowledge both, because they're alive within your reality, and acknowledge that the results, the pattern of behaviors, results, and impact are demonstrating that the fantasy isn't real. Then allow yourself to receive that and grieve that loss, because it's a real thing that you've lost. You've lost a hope. The world kind of becomes disoriented and fragmented for a little bit because we're losing an orientation to reality and to ourselves. But it's an essential step back into our sobriety, back into our sovereignty. Go gently. Okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being courageous. Thank you for allowing me to have some impact and influence in your world. Thank you for being the badasses that you be, y'all. Okay. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And again, if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Guys, share this out to friends, family, whom you think will benefit from it as well. Let me know your experience of this in the comments below. Thank you, Laura and Diane, for commenting. And I'll see you guys in our next episode.